Okay, so Kim, you're going to teach this lesson on Monday.
Correct.
All right, and where does this lesson fall in the whole unit?
We're in the relative beginning of the unit. We're doing adding and subtracting decimals. We have started with identifying the decimal, being able to make the decimal, and then we have gone to adding the decimal without regrouping. So now on Monday, we're going to start with adding with regrouping.
Okay, and what are you thinking about using for manipulatives?
Well, we're going to use our base 10 blocks. We have the virtual manipulatives that kind of showed up on the board, but we also have our base 10 blocks here that we're using so that we can physically make the number and then show what addition means, and then to actually physically regroup them.
Okay, let's walk through a problem.
Okay.
And perhaps that'll lead us to start thinking about some student misconceptions.
Okay. All right. What do we got?
So what do you want to add?
All right, so...
What do they have to do? They have to add through the
thousandths place.
Thousandths place. Are you going to start with a smaller number first?
I am. I'm going to start with just through the hundredths place because it's a little bit more familiar, and then we're going to add into the thousandths place.
Okay.
Once we get that. And for right now, what we're doing is we're using this as 1. So this is our whole right here. So if we're adding 1 and 37 hundredths. That's what I got there. 1 and 37 hundredths. And then, I don't know, say we add 55 hundredths.
Okay.
So,
are you going to use anything for the decimal point so students are made aware of?
Hadn't thought about that yet.
Just so that they're reminded they're working with decimals instead of...
We could do the old-fashioned right on the desk. And put it right just like that. That was a good idea. That way, because I know that sometimes children try to use one of these, but then I think it gets confusing.
It does.
So
what are you expecting the students to be able to do?
Well, first of all, I'm expecting that they can understand what addition means, because addition means putting it together. So first of all, I expect that they should be able to do this here, because now we've added them. I expect that they should be able to kind of count what we have. So if we have 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths, which is going to be interesting there, because are they going to count it as 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, or will they count it like whole numbers? So that will be interesting to see what happens there.
And that might be a misconception. They may be counting them as whole numbers and not saying the tenths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not recognizing that this here is the whole. And then this with the hundredths, 1, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000, 1100, 1200. I can see them doing something like this here. So 1 in 800, 1200s.
Okay, and that sort of ties in with one of your long-term goals about the language of math.
Correct.
You want them to be able to speak competently using math language.
Exactly.
And I could see students doing that as well.
So
how are you going to stop that? How are you going to get them to reconsider?
Well, I think first of all, it's just because I'll be doing this small group, so they'll be real close by and we can watch for these things. But I think first is that when they're counting, making sure that aloud we're counting, using the word tenth there and using the word hundredth there. And then also talking about... no, I'm sorry. I was going to say also talking about, well, this is 8 tenths, which is the same as 80 hundredths. Like trying to get them understanding what's happening here.
And how do you think you're going to show them how to regroup with the hundredths?
Um, well, this is going to be the interesting part. I'm hoping that they'll draw on their knowledge from whole numbers because, in adding and subtracting whole numbers, when they get a group of 10 here, they need to trade it in with me, and we make sure it's the same size so that we can show it's the same thing. And then we put that group of 10 over here. And then we talk about, now what do we have? So instead of having 12 here, we have 2. But what happened to that other 10 is it came over into this column. Nothing changed here. So our answer is 1 and 92 hundredths.
So you mentioned that you think they'll be able to tie in with the whole number regrouping.
I'm hoping they can tie it into the whole number regrouping.
Hoping, yeah. Question I have, though, is in whole number regrouping, you're going up. Here, you're taking hundreds and turning them into tenths. Do you think that's going to be confusing?
Now that you mention that, absolutely. I didn't think about that.
How are you going to explain how we can take something that, for students comparing it with whole numbers, might say hundreds is larger than tenths? Have you had a conversation about?
Well, we have had that conversation, and we've talked about the difference between having $89.89 and 8 cents.
Okay.
So we've kind of related it to money, but at the same time, that's going to go back to how well do we know our place value? Do we understand that when we are on this side of the decimal, that we have tenths and hundredths, and as we keep going, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So now that we're mentioning it, I guess when we go this way on the place value chart, it gets bigger. It doesn't matter if it's here or up here. And when we go this way on the place value chart, it gets smaller. So it doesn't matter if that's a whole number or a
That's an excellent
decimal.
thing to stress, I think.
Didn't even think about that, but that would be good.
I think so.
Again.
Which again would tie back into place value chart and the number line.
Right. And it also talks about why, when we regroup, does it go this way and not this way?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why doesn't that go into thousands? Why does it come up here to tenths?
Yeah. Okay. So do you have any other manipulatives planned besides the base 10 blocks? You're going to have them work with base 10.
I'm going to have them work with base 10 and then go into being able to draw it on here. Initially, we're going to work with tenths and hundredths, and then we're going to move down to thousands once we kind of understand the regrouping here.
So this area right here is for the numbers.
Correct.
And then the grids, the students will be coloring in.
Correct.
And then this will be the second number, and they'll be adding.
The way we're coloring this in, so I don't know. Can I go back to my original, what I had here?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what I had, but
you had 1 and 8 tenths, 1 and 8 tenths, and 12 hundredths.
Originally, I think we had 1 and 5. Well, we'll just make it up again. 1 and 5 eighths, right? And then we'll draw out the 1 and 5 eighths. So we'll have 1 and 5 eighths. 1 and 5 eighths. I'm sorry, I'm saying this wrong. 1 and 58 hundredths.
Okay.
I guess we won't do that while we're teaching this.
No.
And then we will add, we're going to use a different color.
Do you think any of your students would have caught that, though?
That's a good question. Is 5 eighths the same thing as 58 hundredths?
Yeah.
We have done decimal and fraction conversions, but that was a misconception in that lesson. So it'd be interesting because we did talk about it, but I don't know if they would actually catch it or not. So here we would add 34 hundredths, and I put it on top, and then we draw it in a different color. what 34 hundredths looks like. So then we get something like this. And then because we're adding, I guess I can put my addition sign up here, that now when I bring this down, we'll end up with kind of the same place where we were. And we've got to talk again about what the regrouping looks like here. So what I'm...
Do you think your students are going to catch the fact that these equal 10 because these are vertical, these are horizontal?
I could have done it the other way, and with my lower group I might, but...
Keep it all vertical?
Keep it all vertical, because just at first it'd be easier to see it.
Yeah.
But what I really want them to understand is that that group of 10, no matter where it is a group of 10.
Absolutely.
So that we can get them into that point of view, or get them to see that.
Okay.
And then for the regrouping part, what I want them to do, we'll take a third color, and we're going to mark through this one here.
And that'll be the group of 10 that you regroup.
Right. And then we'll put this over here. And then what we'll actually do is erase it so that it's gone out of here. So they can see where we got it, where it goes. So now, instead of having 1 and 80 1200ths, I guess, or 8 1200ths, they can see that that's not what we have. We really have 1 and 92 hundredths.
Okay.
To get to that position.
So, and when students are working with decimals, could you see this as being a strategy that they might use on a test, even if they didn't have the graphic organizer, where they could draw columns?
What they could do, when we could,
break out the number.
And honestly, if they're doing well using this form here, we can always go to the back and say, now
where
we can
blank.
we can use bigger numbers. We can do something like 24 and 45 hundredths and 14 and 66 hundredths. You talk about adding. So how do I make 24? 10, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wait. No, that wouldn't work. Because we're using this as the whole.
You are.
So that wouldn't work.
They could draw squares.
They could draw squares. But if we're doing 20, so now this, because it would actually be the cube. Yeah, that would be the cube. This would be the cube. And then this would be the flats.
24.
24. And 40, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
And then we would have, so I don't think that they would be able to do this initially.
But you'd like to see them get there.
Correct.
And I was just, I was thinking something else in another lesson. I don't know where this lesson falls in the unit, but what do you think they would do if you had, since they have to regroup with thousands, what do you think they'd do if the bottom number had the thousands, the top number had hundreds? Do you think they'd,
well, that's further on down the road.
Yes, subtracting, would they know what to do?
I'm not sure that they would know at this point what to do if it wasn't. And that's a good point to bring up, because I think that when we do it with hundreds, tenths and hundreds, we could even do this here.
There you go.
And kind of set and be ready for that. Just to kind of get them ready.
To anticipate what they're going to be.
But I do think when we get to subtraction, that's going to be a huge problem. You know, because there's nothing here. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. We had 5 here, right?
Yeah.
But it could be a huge problem.
Okay.
But even with this, what they can do is they can make their group of 10 like this and make that into here. So now we can see that we have 1 left over. And then we can do, what do we have here? 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 8 tenths, 9 tenths, 10 tenths. We have 11 tenths. So we can see where this one came from, because we had the one left over and we brought that one group over here. Then we can do the same thing here. Group our tenths, sorry. And then we'll have an extra flat here. We'll see that we still have one left over, but that's where this comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And then
well,
1, 2, and 3.
10, 20, 30.
Yeah, 10, 20, 30.
And then be interesting if they bring in, where does the decimal go in there?
That's a huge question that even 6th graders ask.
Yeah,
I don't know where the decimal goes.
So seeing if we can show why the decimal goes there.
Now, when you talked about this lesson before, you'd mentioned you were going to work with snap cubes. Have you kind of moved away from that since you decided the base 10 and this?
For my lower group, I am going to go with snap cubes.
Okay.
And basically, so that with the tens and hundreds to kind of do the same thing, but where they can physically physically put them back together to make that group of 10.
So that they're aware they're making groups of 10.
Right. And definitely when I use them in subtraction, because you can't break these.
So are you going to start with decimals with your low group, or are you going to have them work with whole numbers first with the snap?
Well, interesting. I thought I was going to work with whole numbers with them first, but I had them in a small group yesterday, and we were just making decimals, making this one. These would obviously be tenths, then hundreds, and we started with just talking about, well, if this is ones, then what does this become? If this is a 1, then what does this become? And they were able to make the numbers. And then we did some basic addition yesterday without regrouping, and they were able to do it. So the question's going to be, with my low group, will they be able to do it with the regrouping?
Okay.
Which, at the end of the
like
day,
they're gaining some.
Right. At the end of the day, it's going to be dependent upon how well were they taught regrouping in previous years. If they
Regrouping's a 3rd grade skill, isn't it? Or do they start in second?
Second grade.
2nd grade.
Yep.
Okay.
So, at least I taught it in 2nd grade. I don't remember if it's taught in 1st. But that whole idea of regrouping.
Yes.
And so it's really
and
going to
using
depend
the proper language, like tens instead of.
Yes.
Which I notice even in 6th grade, they have a misunderstanding of, 2 plus 1 instead of 20 plus 10.
Correct.
And to get them saying the numbers the correct way and reminding them constantly of the place value.
Correct.
Same with division. Okay.
And multiplication. And
what time are you going to teach us on Monday?
Let's see.
What time is math?
11:50 to 12:50.
Okay. I'm going to see if Denise can cover my class so I can come up and watch.
That'd be fun.
Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right, thanks.
No problem.
All right.